All right, guys, so we're going to try something different today. One of the videos that we did earlier was showing you how to log with EcuTek, as well as doing some of the basic features of the ECU Connect Bluetooth app. What we're going to do on this is we're actually going to take an A90 2021 Supra, and we're going to show the different things that you can do with the app. It's going to show you some of the more advanced features, as well as the connectivity and what you can do with it. So let's go ahead and fire it up and see what we got here. So the very basics here is going to give you this screen. Here you're going to have a few options. So of course you can use your dealer locator to find your favorite EcuTek master tuner. And we are located in Pennsylvania, just about an hour away from New York City, about an hour and 20 minutes north of Philadelphia. So we're going to work a little bit backwards here. So we'll start out going to the dashboards, and what you can see under the files section, you have a few different options. We have our data logs, the performance results from all the testing that you can do in the car, any trouble codes that you're going to get, and the dashboards. And we're going to talk a lot more about the dashboards. So here you can see some of the more common ones that we've used. We have the SkyActiv G, the Nissans, as well as our Toyota Supra, which is under the BMW B58. I'm just going to silence our notifications here so we get a little bit less our audio. So you can see there's a bunch of different data logs that we did. And it'll actually store the trouble codes for you. So we had some connectivity issue here, and that is what is stored. So next is the performance results. We just did a couple of things testing it out here with limited traction. This last one here in particular was actually interesting because we're at the drag strip, and you could see we did rather poorly. A lot of it was due to the traction issues that we had then. And you could do the 0 to 100, which is going to be your 0 to 60 in the US. And then all the data logs. All of them get stored here, and this will start to take up a lot of space on your phone if you do this a lot. So this is where you'll find them, and you can hit the select button and then select whichever data log you're going to send to your favorite tuner. All right, and going back out here, we're going to go to My Car. Here we're connected to a 2021 Toyota Supra. And these are the various options that we have. Now, depending on the model of the vehicle that you're working on, you're going to have different options. It's also going to depend on the settings that your tuner has put into the vehicle. Depending on that platform, you may or may not have access to custom maps, which would give you access to custom inputs. Some of the sliders that you see, one common one that we frequently do on the Nissans as well as the Subarus, is what we call party mode. And this is going to be your flame maps, pops and bangs, whatever you want to call it. But that we can actually program the intensity of those for cars with larger injectors and those that have the ability to do things like shoot flames. So we'll go down a little bit here. This is the performance analyzer. The car's not actually on, so we're not going to do this, but you can see here, you can select different things to test on it. OBD2 readiness. This is a big deal and a new feature, I think a year or so ago. This is really handy for those of you that flash your car on occasion. You'll know that these monitors will go ahead and reset. And before you go for inspection, you could see if they're actually completed testing or not. And we're going to go to our DTC tool, no codes here. And now custom inputs. So this is where you're going to see some of your sliders for party mode. We use custom traction control on certain vehicles where we can actually dial in the intensity of how much torque we lose based on the degree of slip. So then we can create a slider, or we can go ahead and change the bias on this. And this is just amazing stuff. 10 years ago, you'd never imagine that you can control your car from the phone. And just recently we were testing, and we had a couple of sliders set up for how loud the pops are, how frequent they are, how much of a flame it shoots out the back. And it's just amazing to watch somebody revving the car, and then you can go ahead in real time, take your phone and adjust the sliders so you can get this 370Z making all kinds of racket. So this is how we do this, and it's just amazing. So for the Supra, what we have is a RaceROM controller, which is actually built into EcuTek software, where we can go through and set that controller to do a certain thing. For the Supra right now, which is just an early version of the RaceROM, we can control the actual torque output or the power output, which is going to be more related to boost. And this works amazingly well. You can have this car drive like it's an OEM 200 horsepower car when you're at the minimum setting. And then you can go ahead and crank it back up and it'll give you the full 400 plus foot-pounds of torque, which will just destroy the tires and anything but fourth. So it's really neat. And then we're going to go to map switching. So here we have a few different modes. If you're watching the tach as I'm switching it here, you'd actually see the tach kind of moving up and down with the modes. And here we have it configured with different amounts of ethanol. So the first two modes are going to have your 93 without any fancy RaceROM features. We have Analag in mode 2 and the RaceROM Burble, which is just a little bit more aggressive. And then we have ethanol about 30% and about 50%, which is about as much as you're going to run on the stock turbo on this car without port injection. So you can switch directly with the app, or you can use the cruise controls. Certain cars, you can only use the app. This would be the 16 and up Miata. You can actually only use the app in that vehicle to change modes. There's no cruise control selection. So now we are on the data logging screen. This is the one that you're going to be using when you're interacting with your tuner, when you're setting data logs. You're going to need to make sure that you're using this screen and not your custom dashboards. EcuTek did a really nice job at getting the custom parameters set up, and this is what we need to see in order to be able to actually give you an effective tune. So I'll go through here. You can kind of see some of the features that were some of the parameters that we're able to see. And then for the B58, there's just a ton of them. So don't try to select anything more than is already on here, unless you're specifically asked to or you're trying to fulfill some curiosity of yours. The more you have on here, the slower the data logging is going to be. So you really want to try to limit the number of parameters. You can do a landscape orientation by tilting it, and I'm not going to correct this in post here because it's only going to be a few seconds, but this will actually show you the minimums and the maximums, which you can then clear. You can see here we're just working the throttle because, again, the car is off. Okay, and then the log mark button. This is another important one. While you're logging, you can go ahead and hit the log mark button. So if you're having some kind of a hiccup, you had some kind of a problem, just get in there and hit that button. That way, later on, when we're reviewing the logs and trying to figure out where the problem is, we can actually find exactly in the data log where that is. I'm getting a little ahead of ourselves here in the video, so let's go back a little bit. This is going to be how you can customize it. You can change the parameters, but then you can go back in through here and do reset selection and then reset the defaults. So if you get too many parameters, or I get back to you and tell you that you got double everything, just go through there and reset it. And then that'll give us the pertinent data that we need. Next up, and let's go back a little bit here so you can see where we went. So we just went through data logging. The next thing is the dashboard, and this is the coolest feature of this whole unit. So a lot of the other programmers out there for different vehicles will give you an interface, and it's usually some kind of a clunky Chinese device that is pretty similar across a lot of platforms, and they're pretty low resolution, generally rather clumsy to actually navigate through. Because this is based off of the phone, you get a nice display. You can even take a tablet. Some people have Android head units in their cars, and you can do the same thing with an Android head unit, which is just really awesome. And here we went ahead and created some custom dashboards specific to the B58, though for the FRS and some of the other models, we use a very similar kind of a layout. In the FRS and the BRZ, a lot of those cars see a lot of track use, so these graphs down here are incredibly helpful. And this is actually a relatively new feature, but it lets you see Some of the parameters like oil pressure, we'll put that on in the FRS. We have a aftermarket oil pressure sensor that runs into the ECU, and then we can data log it here, and we can set specific alarms for it as well, which is really neat. In this particular case, we have a B58 that we're doing some R&D on, and we have knock correction that we're trending, intake manifold pressure, and some of these other things are just nice to have. And some of it we just added in for testing, like this brake pressure value. So we'll go through here. We're already on the dashboard screen, and we're pushing the brake, so you can see the pressure being read here. Now, if you actually had the car on, this goes up to about 1,000 when you push the brake, but with the car off, we're only getting a couple of hundred. You can see our throttle, and then the different dashboards that you saw earlier. And then when you just click pretty much anywhere, it'll bring you into this menu up here. There you go. Let's go back a little bit. I'll give you this option. You can edit. It didn't capture too well in the video here, but you can edit this screen once you tap the screen. And then you can see the different gauges that we have set up over here. So you have multiple pages that you can just swipe across to get to them. I'm not really sure how many you can have, but generally 2 or 3 is probably more than enough for something like this. And there's a grid. This is about the usable screen space that we have here on this iPhone 8. And we're going to go ahead and click on this knock graph. And what's neat here is we actually have 2 parameters on one graph. And that seems like a little detail, but that's a huge advantage to being able to watch things in real time. You could actually put boost pressure on here, but it's generally better to have values that are going to have the same numerical range. So what we did here was we have our knock label. We have 2 channels that we're watching. We manually set these minimum and maximum values because I don't want the scale of the graph actually changing. I want it to be the same throughout. So we're going to go through and watch. So we have knock retard average and too fast, and knock retard cylinder 3. So we're watching these specifically because the average is going to give you the average of all 6. This car has individual cylinder monitoring, and cylinder 3 is generally going to be the first one that we're going to see activate. So there's our intake manifold pressure. We have 0 would be absolute, like vacuum, so that's why it kind of starts off a little bit in the middle. Now again, we're getting ahead of ourselves a bit. So let's add a new gauge. So you're going to tap on the screen, hit the edit, then hit the plus, which will get you to this display right here, right there. And then you're going to choose the style. There's different ones based on the kind of parameter that you're going to want. We'll just do some testing here. So we'll choose, let's see, what should we choose? We'll just do the accelerator position again, because we could see that with the car being off. I'm not going to go through and set all these for now. I'm just going to put it on there, and you can change the size of all of these as well. So here is just your regular old accelerator pedal. So let's go back and add some advanced features to this. And this is one of my favorite things here. We go into the alarms. And if you have this phone somewhere in front of you, this is going to be more visible than your little red LED that you might see on your maybe oil pressure gauge. So we set this alarm for a high of 80, and as we push down on the throttle, look at that. That is going to get your attention. So you also have a low threshold, not just a high, and you can change the colors there. So we'll go ahead and do that. We'll change the type to just a warm-up, which is, it's not going to flash, but it'll be a different color. So when we have a threshold below 10, you'll see that it's actually going to be blue. There you go. You can kind of see it there a little bit. So that tells you that, oh, and there we go. We got to our 100%. And then you can set that lower value as the alarm as well. It doesn't have to be the blue. You can change that. This is just amazing stuff. Again, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when I first started doing this commercially, something like this was just unheard of. We had clunky boxes that you're just excited when you would complete a flash without breaking the ECU. And now we can go ahead and take our phone out and control how much flame the car shoots with one of these apps. So it's super cool stuff. Hope you guys got something out of this video, and if you have any questions, send us an email and hopefully we can help you out.